This video looks at the addition to requirement 6.1.2.1 risk analysis through Sanctioned Interpretation 21. IATF requirement 6.1.2.1 in the original requirement in IATF 16949 focused on an organization including in its risk analysis an effective process for lessons learned, using information from product recalls, product audits, field returns and repairs, complaints, scrap, and rework. The Sanctioned Interpretation 21, issued in July 2021 and effective from November 2021, added a requirement to include in the risk analysis process cyber attack threats to information technology systems. So, Niall, can you give me some background on the addition to this requirement?
Yeah, and Paul, this is part of, I would say, a suite of cyber-related sanctioned interpretations. But this one acknowledges really that there are, one of the many threats that organisations face in the automotive supply chain is cyber attacks. Again, we know that organisations are more and more reliant on IT systems to ensure continuity of supply to their customers. And an attack on these IT systems can pose a significant risk. Cyber attacks are already included in the IATF requirement for contingency plans, and we've discussed that previously, including the action to be taken in the event of a cyber attack to keep continuity of supply to the customer. But I think the addition of cyber attacks in the 6.1.2.1 requirement is focused on being more proactive rather than reactive in identifying and mitigating, reducing the risk of cyber attacks before they occur.
Right, so proactive rather than reactive.
Yeah.
So when they do this risk analysis, and obviously the organization has to document the evidence of it, what are some of the things they should consider in doing the risk analysis?
Initially, it should be a multidisciplinary approach. So there should be a multidisciplinary team involved. This could include the internal IT function, the external service providers, HR, and representation from other processes using IT equipment in the organisation.
Right, yeah. So that's a good point, that it shouldn't be done by one person in isolation, that we should be getting the input of all the relevant interested parties in this. So once we've got these correct people together, then how should the risk analysis be undertaken and recorded?
IATF don't define in detail how that's done. There's no specified way of how risk assessment should be undertaken.
Yeah.
I think one of the best places to start is to understand the interfaces between all the internal IT systems and the sort of wider world. And this is where risks of cyber attacks may come from. Well as the organisation servers, this could also be manufacturing equipment that is connected to the internet. Again, more and more common these days as equipment receives machine software updates, etc.
Yeah, no, that's a really good way of looking at it. Yeah, how are we connected to the outside world? Because that's where the attacks are going to come from. And then once we've identified these risks, then what about the evaluation of the risk?
So typically a kind of conventional approach that many organisations will use will be to look at probability and impact. And in this situation, the probability and impact of a cyber attack. So in simple terms, this means the team would use historic data and any externally available information to rank the probability of a cyber attack for the different systems and applications, shall we say, and then assess if a cyber attack did occur, what would likely be the impact of that, both internally and to any customers or other interested parties.
Okay, yeah, and I've seen that in many companies. Probability and impact is the most used, I think, method of risk assessment. So once we've done the risk assessment, then what would be the expectation about what is done with the results of the risk assessment?
Risk analysis without actions is essentially not very helpful. So it's great to understand and define the risks, but the key thing is then what do we do next? So the expectation would be that the results of the risk analysis and the current controls are evaluated, and then opportunities for improvement are identified. A typical way we would expect actions to be assigned to relevant people to help manage, mitigate that risk. Or if possible, take actions to reduce the threat in the first place.
No, I think that's really important, that this is not just filling out a paper exercise. This is making sure that we're driving continual improvement activities to reduce the threat of a cyber attack. What might be some practical examples that an organization may take to try and reduce the risk then?
So I think a good example would be vulnerability testing, maybe with the support of an external provider who would be able to give feedback on where the risks lie in your system, and employee training in recognizing a potential cybersecurity threat. So this could be, for example, from a phishing email.
Which I guess could be linked to the contingency plan requirement about testing
exactly.
the plan is working. So I think a lot of these requirements on cybersecurity are all interlinked together.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Niall. Today's world, where an organization rely more and more on IT systems to run their business processes, a significant risk to the continuity of supply to customers is cyber attacks. This has been recognized by IATF, and to reduce the risks, auditable requirements have been added to IATF 16949 related to the management of cybersecurity. Sanctioned Interpretation 21 mandates any IATF 16949 certified organization includes the threat of cyber attacks in their risk analysis process, and that they retain records of this risk analysis. The method of undertaking the risk analysis is not specified in IATF 16949, but typically when risks are identified, they are addressed based upon probability of the risk occurring, and if the risk does occur, what would be impacted.